I worked hard for years to buy my first car. A day later, my brother took the keys, drove it without permission, and completely destroyed it. Hey there, welcome to today's story. Are you new here or just coming back? Either way, I'm glad you stopped by. And if you enjoy the content, I'd love your support to help me hit 1,000 subscribers soon. Your support keeps me motivated to bring more amazing stories like this. Now, let's dive into today's story. The main character faces a challenge that might feel familiar, maybe something you've experienced or can relate to. Ever had to make a tough decision to stand up for yourself or stop protecting someone else's mistakes? Stick around until the end to see how the character deals with it and what lessons are learned along the way. It's funny, isn't it? The things we dream of as kids, the one thing that feels just out of reach yet still manages to become our whole world when we finally get it. For me, that one thing was a car. Not just any car. It was the car I'd always wanted, shiny, new, and mine. I had spent years working multiple jobs, sacrificing so many small pleasures, no vacations, no new clothes. And all those nights staying in when my friends went out. It wasn't easy. But when I finally had the money, when I could stand there with my hard-earned cash, signing those papers, I felt like I had just won the lottery. The smell of fresh leather, the gleaming paint, the way the engine roared to life when I turned the key for the first time. It was pure magic. I felt like I had accomplished something most people would never get to experience. It was my success, my reward, and I was going to show it off to the world. Brian had always coasted through everything, living in the shadows of our parents' unconditional love. Never facing consequences for his actions, always protected. When I drove up to my parents' house to show off the car, I wasn't expecting much. A few compliments, maybe some light teasing. But Brian? He stood there, casually leaning against the garage, barely looking up from his phone when I parked. Nice ride, he said, but there was something in his voice. Something I didn't like. I didn't want to make a scene, so I tried to be cool about it. Thanks, it's a beauty, right? Less than 100 miles on it. Brian just grinned. Cool. Let me take it for a spin, he said, his hand already reaching for the door. Oh no, I thought. A cold shiver running down my spine. No, he couldn't be serious. I slammed the door shut just in time. No way, I said firmly. I just got it. You're not driving it. But Brian wasn't the type to take no for an answer. He didn't even flinch, just rolled his eyes. Oh, come on, Rachel. Don't be such a control freak. It's just a car. Let me take it for a ride. I won't break it. There it was. That arrogant smirk. That entitlement. The kind of smile that said, I'm gonna do what I want, and no one can stop me. The thing with Brian was that he never took no for an answer. If I didn't give in, I knew he'd find a way to get what he wanted. I had learned that the hard way a few times before, but this time it felt different. Brian wasn't just asking to borrow my car. He wasn't looking for a little favor. It wasn't just about the keys. It was about control. And always getting out of the consequences of his actions. It was like he had this invisible shield around him. No matter what mess he made, someone was always there to clean it up. It was never Brian's fault. Never his responsibility. I had learned the hard way to stand up to him when things got tough. I remembered a time when we were kids, Brian had borrowed my bike and, of course, he didn't return it in one piece. The tire was flat, the frame scratched, and the gears completely shot. But when I confronted him about it, he acted like it was no big deal. I was just using it, he said. What's the problem? You're acting like I stole it. I let it go then, even though I didn't want to. I just couldn't stand the thought of fighting about something so trivial. But this was different. This wasn't just a bike. This was my brand new car. My hard-earned freedom. Everything I had worked so hard for, finally mine. I wasn't going to let Brian take that from me. But of course, I had underestimated him. That night, I put my keys on the entryway table while I ran upstairs to grab something from my room. I was only gone for a few minutes. Just a quick check of my phone and a deep breath to calm my nerves. I didn't even think twice. Why would I? It was my house, my car, and I was sure as hell not going to let anyone take it. When I came back downstairs, I noticed the table was empty. I froze, staring at the spot where the keys had been sitting just moments before. It was like a cold shiver ran through my spine, a sense of dread settling in the pit of my stomach. I didn't panic right away. I thought maybe I had misplaced them. Maybe I had grabbed them by accident. I checked my pockets, my bag, the counter, the hallway, nothing. Brian. My heart sank. No, he wouldn't. Not this time. I sprinted to the door, throwing it open as I looked outside. My driveway was empty. The night air was still, the quiet broken only by the sound of my frantic breathing. It felt like everything was moving in slow motion. I could hear the muffled sound of my footsteps on the pavement as I ran down the driveway. My eyes darted left and right, scanning the street for any sign of my car. But nothing. Then I heard it. A low, guttural screech, the sound of tires on pavement too fast, and it echoed down the street. My pulse quickened. I felt like I was trapped in a nightmare, unable to wake up. No. I grabbed my phone from my pocket, hands shaking as I dialed Brian's number. It rang. Once. Twice. 3 times. He didn't pick up. I texted him, "Where are you?" No response. Maybe he's just driving around having fun. He'll come back soon. I tried to calm myself, but it didn't help. My heart was pounding harder with each passing second, and I could feel the anxiety building in my chest like a weight that refused to lift. I paced back and forth, checking my phone over and over, expecting a message, a call, something to tell me this was just a misunderstanding. But nothing. I thought about calling Mom, telling her what happened, but I knew exactly what she'd say. She'd make excuses for him, just like she always did. "Oh, Rachel, you're overreacting. Brian didn't mean to take your car. He's just a kid, he doesn't understand the value of things like you do." I couldn't deal with that right now. I couldn't go down that road again. 2 hours passed before my phone rang, and I jumped, nearly dropping it in my haste to answer. I didn't recognize the number. It wasn't Brian's. "Ms. Rachel Anderson?" The voice was calm but serious, and it sent a chill straight through me. "This is Officer Michaels with the county police. We're calling about a vehicle registered under your name. There's been an accident. The driver is unharmed, but the vehicle has significant damage." My breath caught in my throat. It felt like the floor had been ripped out from under me. "What?" I leaned against the wall, trying to steady myself, but my legs felt like jelly. "Who was driving?" I managed to choke out, dreading the answer but needing to hear it. There was a long pause on the other end. I could hear the officer tapping something on his keyboard, taking his time. A young man identifying himself as Brian Anderson. I felt my world tilt. The anger, the frustration, the helplessness, they all hit me in a wave that left me gasping for air. Brian. My brother. The fact that he had taken my car wasn't even the worst part. It was the fact that he had wrecked it. He didn't care. He didn't care about my hard work, my sacrifices. He didn't care about the trust one had given him, the love I had shown him. All of that meant nothing to him. I could barely speak as the officer went on, giving me the details of the crash. But I barely registered any of it. My mind was spinning, replaying everything that had led to this moment. I wasn't just mad at Brian. I was betrayed. I didn't even know how to feel anymore. Part of me was angry, furious, really. But there was another part of me that felt something deeper, something darker. This wasn't the first time Brian had taken something from me. It was the first time, however, that he had taken something so precious, something that was mine. And in a way, that felt worse. I tried to pull myself together, but it was hard. I felt like I was suffocating under the weight of what had just happened. The officer gave me the address of the accident site. I hung up the phone without even saying goodbye. The words stuck in my throat. I knew what I had to do next. I had to face Brian. I had to make him understand what he had done. But right now, I couldn't think about that. Not yet. All I could do was brace myself for what was to come. I don't even remember driving to the crash site. It was like everything was moving in slow motion. Like I was trapped in a dream that I couldn't wake up from. My hands were gripping the steering wheel so tightly that my knuckles were white, but I could barely feel them. My mind was racing, thoughts spinning like a whirlwind, each one more intense than the last. How could he be so careless? How could Brian do this to me? To us? The flashing red and blue lights of the police cars reflected off my rearview mirror, blinding me for a second. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself, but the air in my lungs felt thin. Like I couldn't get enough of it. The tightness in my chest was suffocating, and every beat of my heart seemed to make it worse. I couldn't control the tremor in my hands, the anxiety creeping up my spine like a cold wave. Get a grip, Rachel. You need to be strong now. I told myself, but it was hard to listen. I finally pulled up behind the police cars and parked. My tires grinding against the gravel, the sound almost deafening in the silence of the night. I didn't want to look, but I knew I had to. The weight of what had happened settled into my bones, the truth starting to sink in with each passing second. I got out of the car, my legs feeling like jelly. I took one shaky step, then another, and finally, I turned the corner. And there he was, Brian, standing there, next to what was left of my car. Couldn't breathe. The sight of my car, the one I had worked so hard for, the symbol of my independence, my sacrifice, was beyond recognition. The front bumper was completely destroyed, the hood crumpled like a soda can, and one of the headlights was completely shattered. The once pristine paint was now scratched, dented, and scraped. The metal twisted in unnatural ways. It was a vision of complete destruction, and I felt like I was staring at my own heart being torn apart. My stomach flipped as the anger bubbled up inside me. I didn't even notice the tears welling up in my eyes. My pulse raced, my fists clenched, and my breathing quickened as I stormed toward him. "Brian!" I yelled, my voice hoarse and raw with emotion. The sound of my own voice startled me, but I couldn't stop it now. I was shaking, every nerve in my body tingling with rage. My hands trembled at my sides, but I forced myself to keep walking, my feet hitting the ground harder with each step. He didn't even flinch, didn't even look up when I approached him. Brian stood there, arms crossed over his chest, his expression blank. As if he was expecting this moment, as if he was waiting for me to be angry, to yell, to cry. He didn't even care. I was so close now. I could almost feel the heat radiating from my body, my anger sizzling under my skin. He was just standing there, calm, like nothing was wrong. How could he be so cold? I wanted to scream. I wanted to slap him, to shake him, to make him understand what he had done. But instead, I just stood there for a moment, taking in the scene in front of me. It didn't feel real. It didn't feel like something that was actually happening to me. "What the hell is wrong with you?" I demanded, my voice breaking as I felt the anger rising in my throat. It was like a pressure cooker ready to explode, and I could barely hold it in. Brian didn't even look at me. He wasn't fazed in the slightest. He just shrugged, that smug, infuriating look on his face. It was the same look he had always had when he knew he was getting away with something. The look that said he knew better, that he knew he could get away with anything. And this time, it was no different. "Tough luck," he muttered, his voice casual, as if we were talking about a broken phone or a flat tire, not the total destruction of my dream. The words hit me like a punch to the stomach. I could feel my body tense, the rage I had been holding and snapping, shattering everything I thought I could control. How could he be so flippant about this? About something I had worked so hard for? My vision blurred for a second as tears welled up. The anger was overwhelming, but beneath it was something darker, something deeper. It was the feeling of betrayal. It was the feeling of someone you loved, someone you had tried to protect, just ripping your world apart without a second thought. I took a deep breath, trying to hold it together. My hands were clenched into fists now, my nails digging into my palms as I struggled to keep my voice steady. "How could you do this to me?" I demanded, my voice breaking with the weight of everything I was feeling. "This car was everything to me, Brian. Everything I worked for. And you just took it like it was nothing." Brian still didn't look at me. He barely acknowledged my words. He wasn't sorry. He wasn't even remotely apologetic. He was just standing there, waiting for me to calm down, waiting for me to forgive him. "You don't get it, do you?" I continued, my voice trembling with raw emotion. "You don't get how hard I've worked for this. How much I sacrificed, how many nights I stayed in. How many times I had to say no to myself just so I could have this." I gestured at the wreckage of my car, my heart sinking. "And you think it's just a car, just a thing. But it's not. It was mine." I could feel the tears burning in my eyes now, but I refused to let them fall. Brian looked at me for the first time since I'd arrived. But there was no remorse in his eyes. There was no apology, just that same irritating smirk. "Mom and Dad will make you forgive me," he said, shrugging as if the words came so naturally to him. "Don't worry about it." The air between us felt thick. It was suffocating. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't understand how we had gotten here. How did this happen? How had Brian, my brother, become this person? The selfish, entitled, careless person who thought nothing of wrecking my world and walking away without a single ounce of remorse? For a moment, everything went quiet. The police officers were standing a few feet away, watching, but I didn't care. My focus was entirely on Brian. And for the first time in my life, I didn't know if I could ever forgive him. I took another deep breath. I had to make him understand. He had to face what he had done. But how could I make someone like him, someone who had never been forced to take responsibility for his actions, see the damage he had caused? I stood there, the weight of everything pressing down on me, and then I finally spoke, my voice cold with finality. You're on your own with this one, Brian. I'm done cleaning up your messes. Mom and Dad can't fix this for you. I turned and started walking away, my mind a chaotic whirlwind of emotions. But there was something in my chest, something that felt like relief. I had said it. I had finally said it. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't afraid anymore. I don't think I'd ever felt more betrayed in my life. It wasn't just the car, it was everything. The years of hard work, the sacrifices I had made, and now my own brother had destroyed it. And what was his response? Don't worry, Mom and Dad will fix it. His words echoed in my mind like a slap. Brian had always been the one to get away with things. The golden child. The one who could do no wrong. But this time was different. He had crossed a line. And yet, the sheer nonchalance in his voice when he dismissed everything I had worked so hard for, when he destroyed the one thing I was proud of, was maddening. It was as if he didn't even see the value in what he had taken from me. It wasn't just about the car. It was about everything I had sacrificed just to get it. I could still feel the anger bubbling beneath my skin. I could still hear the sound of my voice cracking as I confronted him, as I tried to get him to understand the weight of what he had done. But he didn't care. He never did. That night, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the wrecked car, the pieces of metal crumpled together in a twisted heap. Every time I tried to relax, my thoughts would spiral back to Brian's smug little face, his unbothered attitude as he leaned against the wreckage. I tossed and turned in bed, not knowing how to shake the sense of betrayal that clung to me. How could he do this? How could he not see what it meant to me? When I finally did manage to fall asleep, it was fitful. My dreams were filled with flashes of my car, of Brian's careless smirk, and of my own hands, desperately trying to put the pieces of my life back together. But no matter how hard I tried, the pieces wouldn't fit. When I woke up the next morning, I knew what I had to do. It was time for Brian to face the consequences of his actions. I wasn't going to be the good daughter anymore. I wasn't going to forgive him just because we were family. I had spent too long forgiving him, too long cleaning up after his messes, too long being the one to let things slide. But I was done. Done being the one who always gave in. Done being the one who took the fall for everything. I drove over to my parents' house, my mind made up. The drive felt like it took forever. The thoughts in my head whirling and crashing into each other. Would they understand? Would they even care? I could already feel the weight of the conversation I was about to have, the heaviness of confronting my parents about their son, about the choices he had made and the damage he had caused. When I finally pulled up in front of their house, I took a deep breath and braced myself. I wasn't going to back down. I wasn't going to apologize for being upset anymore. I wasn't going to let them make excuses for Brian. This was it. This was the moment where I had to stand up for myself. For once, I had to stop being the one to clean up the mess. I walked inside, and there they were, Mom, sitting at the kitchen table with her tired smile, and Dad, with his usual calm demeanor. They both looked up at me, but there was something in their eyes. Something that told me they already knew why I was here. They had probably already talked about it, probably already tried to figure out a way to smooth things over. Before I could say anything, Mom spoke first. Rachel, honey, you need to let this go. I know you're upset, but it's just a car. It can be replaced. She said it softly, as if her words would magically make everything better. As if telling me to let it go would actually make me feel better. I shook my head, my fists clenching at my sides. I could feel the anger rising again, the frustration building like a storm inside me. Just a car, I repeated, trying to keep my voice calm, but the words felt like they were tearing out of me. It's not just a car, Mom. It's everything. Everything I've worked for. Everything I've sacrificed. And now, Brian, he destroyed it. And he doesn't even care. Dad looked at me then, his brow furrowing as if he didn't quite understand why I was so upset. "Rachel, honey," he chimed in, his voice gentle but firm. "Family forgives. Don't make this worse than it is. Family forgives." I had heard that phrase 1,000 times growing up. I had heard it every time Brian messed up. Every time he did something that he shouldn't have, Mom and Dad would always say the same thing. Family forgives. But they never said it to Brian. They never made him face what he did. They never made him take responsibility. It was always me, always the one who had to forgive, always the one who had to make everything right. But not this time. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my cool. My hands were shaking, but I forced myself to look at them. I had to say it. I had to make them see what Brian had done. I wasn't going to let them brush this under the rug like they always did. "No, Dad. You don't get it?" I said, my voice steady now, but laced with a coldness that surprised even me. "Brian stole my car. He destroyed it. And now I'm the one left picking up the pieces. Again, this isn't just about the car. This is about the fact that no one ever holds him accountable for anything. He gets to do whatever he wants and everyone just cleans up after him." Brian, as expected, just sat there with his smug little grin, scrolling through his phone like everything was fine. It was as if he didn't even hear what I had said. As if nothing mattered to him but his own convenience. I couldn't take it anymore. The sight of him sitting there so casually. While my whole world was falling apart, it was like a slap in the face. My hands clenched into fists at my sides, but I didn't move. I didn't yell. I had learned that yelling at Brian was like yelling at a brick wall. It wouldn't get me anywhere. So instead, I stared at him, my gaze burning with the words I couldn't say out loud. "Don't you dare shrug this off, Brian," I said, my voice low but firm. "This isn't just about the car. It's about respect. It's about accountability. And it's about time you start taking responsibility for the messes you make. I'm done being the one who cleans up after you." For the first time, I saw something flicker in Brian's eyes. It was brief, but it was there. A flash of guilt? Regret? I couldn't be sure. But it was enough to make me pause, to make me wonder if, just maybe, this time he might actually listen. But then the moment passed, and the smug grin returned. "Whatever, Rachel," he said, dismissing me with a wave of his hand. "You're overreacting." He still didn't get it. Still thought it was just a thing. I looked at my parents one last time, the disappointment in my chest threatening to overwhelm me. But I wasn't going to let it. I wasn't going to let them get away with this anymore. Not this time. "I'm done," I said, my voice cold and final. "I'm done forgiving. I'm done pretending that everything is okay when it's not. You can fix the car, but you can't fix what's broken in this family. And until you realize that, nothing is going to change." I turned and walked out, the sound of my footsteps echoing in the hallway. The weight of everything pressing down on my chest. I didn't know what would happen next, but for the first time in a long time, I felt like I had finally taken control of my life. Knock knock. Now you're about to watch the best part of the story, but before that, make sure to subscribe to my channel so we can keep going together. I knew that if I let this slide, it would set the tone for the rest of my life. Brian would continue to get away with everything and I'd be left holding the bag every time. I would forever be the one who cleans up the messes, the one who picks up the pieces. The good daughter who forgives and forgets. The one who never gets to stand up for herself. The thought of it churned in my stomach. Every time I thought about Brian's smug face, his carefree attitude, it made me want to scream. How could he just act like nothing happened? How could he destroy everything I had worked so hard for and not care at all? And then there was my family. My mom, who always told me to let it go. My dad, who believed that family forgives no matter what the other person did. "Don't make it worse than it is," he'd said. "It's just a car, Rachel. Just a car." I had to remind myself that to them. It was just a thing. But to me, it was everything. It was my independence, my hard work, my sense of accomplishment. I couldn't just let this go. Not this time. So, I did something I had never done before. I took a deep breath, calming the storm of emotions swirling inside me, and walked into the insurance office. The air felt thick with tension as I pushed open the door. The office was small, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. I could hear the sound of typing, the soft hum of a computer. But all I could focus on was the beating of my own heart, thudding loudly in my ears. I was here. I had come this far. There was no turning back now. The lady behind the desk looked up when I approached. She was middle-aged with a professional smile, but there was something about her demeanor that felt indifferent, like she had seen this type of thing before. A family dispute over a car, probably another entitled child getting away with it. I couldn't blame her. I must have looked like just another case in a long line of complaints. But this wasn't just another case for me. This was my life, my future. And I wasn't going to let Brian's actions define how I lived anymore. "Hi, how can I help you today?" the woman asked, her voice polite but detached. I hesitated for a second. My throat felt tight. But I swallowed and stood a little taller. "I need to file a claim for unauthorized use. My brother took my car without permission and wrecked it. I want to report it as theft." She nodded, her fingers already moving to the keyboard to pull up the forms. "Of course, I'll need you to fill out these details." She handed me a stack of forms and I sat down to fill them out, the weight of the pen feeling heavier with each word I wrote. It was a long, slow burn. I could feel the heat rising in my chest as I wrote down the details. Brian's name, the date, the make and model of the car, the extent of the damage. Each word was like a small stab of reality, a reminder that everything I had worked for was now just a mess of paperwork and formalities. As I filled out the forms, my thoughts started to race. This wasn't easy. It wasn't simple. There was something inside me that wanted to just walk away, to take the easier route, to let it go like I always had before. But I couldn't. Not anymore. I had spent my whole life taking care of everyone else's problems. I had spent my whole life protecting Brian, covering for him, doing the right thing even when it hurt. But I wasn't doing that anymore. I finished filling out the forms and handed them over to the lady. She began typing the details into the system, her fingers moving quickly across the keyboard, the clicking sound echoing in the otherwise quiet room. I watched her, my heart pounding in my chest, waiting for her to confirm what I already knew. "This qualifies as theft," she said, her voice still calm. But there was a small flicker of acknowledgement in her eyes as she looked up at me. "We can proceed with this claim as unauthorized use, and it will go through as a legal case. You're doing the right thing." I could feel a tiny victory deep inside, the knot in my chest loosening just a little. Brian would finally have to face the consequences of his actions. This wasn't just about a car anymore. This was about me standing up for myself. This was about me finally taking control of my life. But it wasn't over. Not yet. I left the insurance office, the sound of my footsteps muffled on the linoleum floor. But inside, I was screaming. I was walking on air, but I was also scared. What would Brian say when he found out? What would my parents say? Would they still try to protect him? Would they blame me for taking things too far? I didn't know. But I knew one thing for sure. I was done. I was done being the person who always picked up the pieces, who always forgave, who always let things slide for the sake of family. I was finally doing something for me. The drive home felt different. The air in the car was lighter, the weight in my chest finally easing, and I could breathe a little easier. For the first time in a long time. I wasn't carrying everyone else's problems. I wasn't cleaning up after Brian. I was taking charge of my life, and that felt like a victory no matter what happened next. The next few days were a blur. I felt like I was moving through the motions of life, but nothing felt real. I went to work, I ate, I slept barely, but my mind was always preoccupied. Brian didn't call, didn't text, didn't try to reach out. His silence spoke volumes. I knew he was feeling the pressure, and it was something I had never seen before. It was as if he was struggling to hold up the facade of confidence. And underneath it, a crack had started to show. I didn't feel sorry for him. Not anymore. The sense of betrayal that had been gnawing at me for days now felt like a distant echo, and the anger that used to bubble up inside me had turned into something cold and final. What Brian didn't realize, what he couldn't understand, was that I wasn't like him. I couldn't just move on from this like it was some small thing. It was too big, too important. And no matter how much he tried to deflect, the weight of what he had done would eventually crush him. Then, one evening, just as I was starting to feel like I might have moved past the worst of it, I got a message from Brian. My phone buzzed with a notification, and when I saw his name, my heart sank. But I didn't hesitate. I opened it. It was his usual arrogance, written in his usual detached, almost dismissive tone. But this time, there was something different. Something I couldn't quite place. Maybe it was the way he worded the message. Or the way his typical bravado was just slightly off. For the first time in a long time, there was a hint of panic behind his words. "I'm sorry for messing up," the message read, "but I'm not paying for all that. You know Mom and Dad won't let this happen." That last line hit me like a punch in the gut. There it was again. The same old belief that Mom and Dad would swoop in and fix everything for him. That I would be the one left to deal with the mess while he just continued to skate by. I could practically hear him shrugging as he typed those words, acting like it was no big deal. The words felt like a dagger, but this time I wasn't going to let it break me. I wasn't going to let him win this round. The air around me seemed to still as I sat there, staring at the screen. The message wasn't just a plea for forgiveness, it was a demand. A demand that I forgive him, that I let him off the hook. But I had already won. It was done. Brian would finally experience what it was like to face the consequences of his own actions. For the first time in his life, no one was going to bail him out. I let the message sit there for a moment before typing a response. Calm, firm, and final. "You're right about one thing, Brian. You messed up. And this time you'll have to face it. I'm not fixing this for you. I'm done." When I hit send, there was a strange sense of relief. It was as though I had exhaled for the first time in days. The message was sent, and I felt lighter, like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. It wasn't just about the car anymore. It was about me, about taking back control of my life, my future. I couldn't spend my life cleaning up his messes. I had spent too long doing that, and it was exhausting. But even though I had sent the message, a small part of me felt a knot in my stomach. Would this change anything? Was I doing the right thing? A few weeks later, I still found myself wondering whether Brian had learned anything from the situation. The weeks dragged on, and things between us remained tense and unresolved. Brian didn't try to reach out again, not directly, but I could feel the weight of the silence between us. My parents, on the other hand, seemed determined to fix things. Every time I spoke to them, there was an underlying current of frustration, as if they thought I was overreacting. They still tried to smooth things over, still told me that family forgives and that I needed to let it go. But I was done. I couldn't play that role anymore. The role of the one who always forgave. The one who always accepted the blame. The one who kept the peace at any cost. I had been that person for too long, and it had done nothing but chip away at my self-worth. My parents didn't see it, they didn't understand, but that was their problem, not mine. Brian was their golden boy, the one who could do no wrong. But not anymore. Not this time. Every time my parents brought it up, I felt myself becoming more resolute, more determined. They wanted me to make up with Brian. They wanted me to be the one to fix it. But I wasn't going to do it. I wasn't going to be the one to clean up his messes anymore. I wasn't going to sacrifice my own peace for the sake of his comfort. Brian finally understood the one lesson he'd been avoiding his whole life, that his actions have consequences. And I wasn't going to be the one to protect him from them anymore. I wasn't going to be the one to fix it, to make him feel better, to make it all okay. In a way, I think that was the hardest part for Brian, to truly realize that he was on his own. For the first time in his life, there was no one there to shield him from the fallout of his mistakes. He had always been able to rely on our parents, on me, to pick up the pieces. But now it was just him and the reality he had created. And as much as it pained me to admit it, I knew it was the right thing. Brian needed to learn this lesson. And if he wasn't going to learn it now, when would he? I couldn't keep carrying the weight of his mistakes. I couldn't keep bending to the will of my family just to avoid conflict. This was my life, and it was time I started living it for myself. So I stood firm. I let the silence linger between Brian and me, and as the weeks went by, I began to feel that sense of power return. It wasn't about being right, it wasn't about winning. It was about reclaiming my voice, my boundaries, and my life. And for the first time in years, I felt free. What do you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts or feedback, so feel free to drop a comment below. Your opinions matter. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss the next exciting story coming your way. Thank you so much for sticking with me till the end of today's journey. I truly appreciate your time and support.